Greetings, fellow video game fans. It's me, Zach Ryan, and my friend, Tom Marks, co-hosts of the IGN's Nintendo Voice Chat. And we're here to talk to you today about some Nintendo games that you might know as Nindies. We actually got a chance to go hands-on with a bunch of Nindies and have a chance to kind of work our way through some of the titles that we saw in the Direct from yesterday. I wanted to real quickly cover off on a couple of games that we're not going to spend a ton of time on. One is My Friend Pedro, which we've previewed a bunch of times here at IGN. I finally got to go hands-on, and it is just as ridiculous as it looks.
What, the banana skateboard shotgun game?
So many backflips and so many, you just murder a ton of old men. It's a very wild game and the banana is very polite. Really looking forward to playing more of that one. Tom, you had a game that you wanted to touch on really quickly.
Yeah, I played a little of Darkwood, which was one of the games that got shown off in the Direct as well. This cool isometric, or not isometric, excuse me, top-down atmospheric horror game. Very creepy. The developer made very sure that they're like, we don't want to jump scare horror. We want it to be like, you're just very uncomfortable horror, and they did a really good job of capturing that.
So then we also wanted to talk about a few games a little bit more in depth.
Yeah.
So let's kick it off with a game that we both went hands-on with, and that is Creature in the Well.
Yeah.
Creature in the Well is this really super cool title. You play as this lovable little robot, and you've been reawakened, and your mission is to power up this giant machine that basically counteracts a sandstorm that's buried this civilization. And the way that you do that is by ricocheting energy balls off of these different like power generators in rooms. But the way you have to think about it is it's like Hyper Light Drifter meets pinball, but with the art style of like a comic book. They said that they were looking at Hellboy, so there's like a lot of these like really deep blacks but like vibrant colors that make it this kind of painterly style. But definitely like Hyper Light Drifter vibes in the way that you dodge around enemy attacks, but then also use those attacks to ricochet either back at enemies or onto these power generators. Kind of like a final confrontation in like a Zelda Ganondorf experience, where you're bouncing back and forth against these energy balls and making sure that they're ricocheting and hitting the targets that you need them to. And like really interesting challenges where you'll come up in these rooms that have these basically like timed puzzles that will open divergent paths that will give you a second power up. Like in my playthrough, I had to do this really intense like back and forth puzzle that opened a door that gave me these dual blades that showed exactly where I was going to be aiming instead of like a general vicinity. Very, very cool game. Really excited to see more of that. You got a chance to play it as well.
Yeah.
Tell me what you thought.
I really enjoyed it too. It's funny that pinball is just becoming a genre after Yoku's Island Express did the pinball platformer, and now we've got like a pinball action game. It's also got kind of evoked like Brick Breaker a little bit, like those kind of games where you're constantly juggling balls. It's like a multi-ball the entire game. There's just like tons showing up. I was very impressed with how hard it was.
Yeah, like, it is challenging.
It is a very simple idea that was actually very, very challenging in practice, and I'm excited to see more of that game basically for every part of it, right? The story was cool, the art was cool, it was very unique, and the uniqueness of it was very fun. So I'm just really interested to see what that has in store.
I like the idea of the lore as well. The creature, the titular creature itself, periodically like appears in the game and talks to you from like below you, or it'll grab platforms and pull you down, and then like you have to power those platforms back up, and it's very, very interesting. Tell me about another game you wanted to talk about, Tom.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Katana Zero.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to play this, but I did watch you play it a little bit.
It is really cool and is really stylish. It's a side-scrolling brawler game, or brawler is kind of like the wrong way to put it. It's almost Hotline Miami-ish, where if you take a hit, you die instantly. Every enemy pretty much takes one hit right away, except you can slow down time. You're an assassin. You can slow down time, and you can also rewind. So if you die, you're actually just rewind to the beginning of the level, because the idea is that you're not actually doing this thing until you've precognitively figured out the correct path through it, and then once you get through it, you zoom back and you actually do it, and that part is just automatic once you figured out the path. But it's extremely stylish, and one of my favorite parts is actually not just the combat, which feels really, really good, but the in-between bits have this dialogue system that's, you get to choose what dialogue options you want, like you'd expect, but almost every conversation also has an option where if you respond quick enough before the other person is done talking, you'll cut them off and you'll be like, just hurry up. And they'll like kind of get mad at you, or sometimes it'll escalate into them calling the police on you. There's a lot of different things that can happen.
You also like see a therapist in between levels and talk about stuff, and then there's like in the trailer they hint that like you see your therapist and get your medicine, so there's obviously something sinister going on there as well.
Right.
Another thing that we want to talk about, another game we want to talk about was Blood Roots. Blood Roots is this really wild Tarantino meets Samurai Jack sort of. It's not even really a brawler because it's like everything is a weapon, right? The way they talked about it to me, the developers, they said it was like a Jackie Chan film in that like you can use anything as a weapon, and so in one scenario you're throwing an axe at somebody, chopping off their arm, taking their arm and hitting another guy, and then jumping on a barrel and rolling that barrel through a bunch of enemies and then running up a tree. It's just really frenetic and really like hectic the way that you play it. It's very, very fast and you have to make decisions on the fly. But it lends to some really, really cool scenarios. And the faster you do it, the more item variety you use, the greater kill variety you have. It gives you a score at the end of each level. The highest I got was a B-, so I think that's fine. That's about where I'm at as a player of any game.
Well, that's also that DMC mentality of it doesn't matter. It's not just about getting from point A to point B. It's getting from point A to point B in the coolest way possible.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you had one more game that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, so I also got a chance to play Stranger Things 3: The Game, which is the video game version of the season 3 of Stranger Things. And it's coming out the same day that season 3 is coming out on Netflix. And it's funny because I talked to the developers a little bit, and if you play this game before you watch season 3 of Stranger Things, you spoil the entire season. And actually, Stranger Things The Game has more in it than the season will. So there's gonna be a lot of little things that you don't see in the show that will be in this. It was interesting, and this really surprised me, the closest point of comparison I had for what game it was like was Goof Troop
on the Super Nintendo.
The Super Nintendo game?
It's actually a great game, Shinji Mikami.
Yeah, it's a really good game, and this game, it's a co-op game where there's a lot of puzzles, there's a lot of brawling, and you're working together with somebody. Sometimes you have to turn off a power switch to get by a camera so that somebody else can hit a button so that you can turn the power switch back on, and then progress together. So it's a lot of working together. I'm interested to see how much it's going to tie into the show in terms of all that new stuff.
Yeah.
I think this will be a fun thing to play once you've binged the entire season and you're ready to
like supplementary.
You just want a little more.
Yeah. Right on. Well, obviously we saw a ton of great games in the Direct. We have a bunch of coverage. You can check out NVC every week. We're going to be talking about Nindies this week, I'm sure. But we also have a couple of Let's Plays that are up right now for you to watch. And then make sure you check back for a big Nindies feature coming later this week. Thank you guys so much. We'll catch you next time.